Hi everyone, this is Tanya from Flying Dog Studio. Thank you so much for joining me as we do a super loose painting with the Caran Neocolor II and the Derwent Inktense. And I will have all of these supplies listed down below. They'll either be in affiliate links or in links that I have put on there, along with the watercolor canvas that I have taped on there very strangely with washi tape and packing tape, but that's just to keep it on, it's not to keep a border. So let's take a look at the Derwent Inktense. The colors we're using today are apple green, and then I have sun yellow. I love the sun yellow, fuchsia, super bright color, and then finally leaf green. This is going to be a very loose, very quick coloring on here. I'm not pre-drawing things out. You know, some of my videos I do because I want it to be a little more exact. But in these videos that are loose, I just simply start with some coloring and doing some loose shapes. So let me set the scene for you. This again is a picture of flowers from our backyard. If you haven't joined any of my videos before, if this is your first time, I do have some more of these out here. I like to draw flowers in my backyard when I'm doing flower pictures. It's usually something my husband has grown. So I have a couple of these pink flowers that I'm really not certain what they are. I'm bad at identifying flowers, if it is a zinnia or if it's a daisy or something like that. I'm your girl, but anything else, I have no idea what it is. So there are two of these. They grow very tall. They start out as something that looks like a weed in the springtime, and then by the end of summer, they are these beautiful pink flowers, and we also have some that come up as white, and the bees absolutely love them. I love to see the honeybees come out to these flowers. So you can see part of our backyard in this, but these flowers were very close to the camera, and they were a little bit, the one in the back's a little bit out of focus, so it was perfect for this. Since it's a loose painting, we don't have to have everything in focus. And what I'm doing here is I'm starting with the Inktense, and I'm getting a good base color on stuff. Now, this is a watercolor canvas, and if you've never worked with watercolor canvas, then stuff moves around on it, especially when you're using the watercolor. Even though it's a watercolor canvas, stuff is going to move around. So you have to be careful how you put your colors down. I like to have a base, and I discovered recently if I put down the Derwent Inktense first, because even though it looks like a watercolor pencil, it's actually an ink-based water-soluble pencil, which means once it's on there, it stains it and it stays. So I'm going to get a good kind of back, and you can see where the flowers are coming in. You're kind of getting what I'm laying down here. You're picking it up, right? So we're going to just get all of these base colors in here, and that's going to give me a good background to add the Caran on top. And I'll be able to come back and pick some of the Caran up after I activate it and make some highlights on these things. So that's where we're headed for now. And if you've never worked with the Derwent Inktense, you don't have to worry about, it's not like a regular colored pencil where you have to worry about the directions of your marks and making certain they don't overlap. Once we activate this with water, it's going to be true to its name. It is intense, so it's an Inktense, and it's going to really turn vibrant on here. If you watch my last video when I used this technique, and I'll list that down below just in case you want to take a look at it, I didn't go quite as hard with the Inktense in the background. In this video, I did. Also, something that's a little different for me, this is a little bit larger canvas for me, and I'm thinking this was a 9x9, maybe it was a 10, I think it was a 9x9. At any rate, it is a larger canvas than what I normally work with on here. I generally like to use a smaller format just because I have arthritis, and as you can see in this video, I'm wearing a glove because that is my compression glove due to the arthritis. So this video is going to be just a little bit longer because the canvas was just a little bit larger. Now, these are the brushes I'm going to be using. This is the Winsor & Newton. This is my flat brush. This is from their One Stroke series. And then I also have the Royal & Langnickel from their Zen series. This is their size 8 round. The Royal & Langnickel tend to hold a little more water than the Winsor & Newton. But I like the flat brush for doing this background, and I don't need a lot of water in my brush when I'm going around these flowers, so that was okay with me. So I'm just activating it, and you'll notice that I'm being careful to go around the flowers right now. And when I switch from one color to the next, yeah, I thought I was going to knock that over too. Sorry about that. I have a couple of these incidents here where I nearly knocked the whole water cup over. Some of those are on camera and some of them I missed getting it filmed, but it did happen. So I'm going to just go ahead and switch back and forth and get more water on my brush and kind of wipe it off when I switch a color, because I don't want this to all mix together. Yeah, it's all going to come together with the green in the background, but when I switch from dark to light, like I just did here in that upper left-hand corner, I want to make certain that I have some distinct areas of color, because there's some distinct areas in the reference photo. And if you would like to have this reference photo, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to put that on my blog. I do that sometimes. I didn't on the last one because I had a picture of my house in the background, and I really didn't, want my address and stuff out there, but I'll be happy to put this picture up for you because it's just my backyard. So let me know if you'd like to have this so you can do your own thing. I do not mind at all. I give you absolute permission to use that picture. Perfectly okay. So now I'm going to start with the center of the flowers and that wonderful bright yellow. And like I said, you can tell how bright this is once you put the water on. And yeah, I'm going to get these gloves. These my first time wearing them, and they were covered with paint on the side when I got finished. And back to those compression gloves. These are wonderful when I'm having trouble with my hands and I want to work a little longer on the art. I will bring out the compression gloves. These, I believe, are by iMac. And again, if I can find a link for those, I will put either an affiliate link or one of my own links down below. You are welcome to click on the affiliate links or on mine, whatever you're happy with. I will tell you the affiliate links is something new that YouTube is doing on my channel. And I do get a small commission if you go there and you purchase. I mean, that would be wonderful. That helps the channel going, but you don't have to use them. Always check around for yourself. Don't just take my word for it or YouTube's word for it. Sometimes they will automatically put those links down there for me. I will look for those gloves. I think I might have gotten them at Walmart, but I'm sure you can get them all over the internet. So this is the process right now. We're going to activate all of these. You can see I had a little bit of yellow left in my brush and got a little orange there, but it didn't hurt my feelings because we can, at this point, still kind of work that out. And it's okay if they run together because we're going to have all of that Caran d'Ache on top defining our shapes for us in just a few minutes. Okay, the magic of YouTube, just a few more paint strokes here, and then the next time you see this, it will have dried for an entire day, and I'm coming back the next morning. Now, this is our Caran d'Ache. This is the set I have, and you can see I've already pulled the colors. I didn't pull all I need. This is pretty typical of me, and I always have to come back and get more, but let's take a look at the colors. First, we have Carmine, and these are the colors we're using for the flower. It says purple, but this comes out to be a bright pink. This one is purple violet. Beautiful. All of these are beautiful colors. And then we have the umber. I use that for absolutely everything. I'll use that for the flowers and the background. I love this color as well. Malachite green. And this is also for the flower. This is ochre. And then I have emerald green. That's for the grass. And then this one is golden yellow. So those two yellows go over with the flower colors. And then finally, my final green right now is dark olive, but I'll be getting the light olive out in just a minute. So you can see the tape is not going to stick. I really need to have this stapled down to keep it from wrinkling up, because when it gets wet, it does have a tendency to kind of warp on you, this watercolor canvas. And this is a Fredrix watercolor canvas, by the way. This is the type I use. I can't remember exactly where I got this one, but you can find them at like Michael's and Walmart and Dick Blick and just all of those places. Hobby Lobby. This may have come from Hobby Lobby. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I love the watercolor canvas. It is the equivalent of working on hot press, so it's super smooth. It's not like just a regular primed cotton canvas. This has been sanded and then, regessoed, reprimed, and it's a wonderful, wonderful canvas. Now, I'll hold these up so that you can see when I'm using colors. I try to remember doing that, and I've slowed down the video so you can catch those as well. I'm wanting to get the background in first. That's why I've started with these, and I'm putting a little pressure on them in some areas. That's where I want the color to be darker, and you'll see that does work if you put a little pressure on, and then you're careful about how much water you add on to the canvas. You can keep some areas light and some areas dark. I don't use that green very often in this. I just needed it to get a certain green. Now there's that light olive. I told you I forgot. I always forget that, and I've forgotten two more colors. I'll pull those out later when we get ready for the details. But I'm just going to block in all of this pretty quickly. Again, loose painting. I'm not worried about detail. I simply want to get some color down. And we're going to change some of this up. So that's the wonderful thing about working on the watercolor canvas. Yes, it's difficult. It's kind of tricky because your color can move around, but it's a good thing because your color can move around. So when you're putting these colors on, if you get in a little bit the wrong place or you need to bring a color down and mix it in a little bit more, you can do that. Something else that I like about these canvas is that you can wet this down, you can activate this with water, or you can leave it just like this. I really like the texture on there. That watercolor canvas has a great texture, but I kind of wanted to add water to it and then go ahead and come back and put some more on top. And you'll notice in just a few minutes, I'm going to pull out some tools and manipulate these colors and pull some of that color up. As I said earlier, you can still see that Inktense underneath. We're going to pull some of that color up, which is going to allow us to get some highlights. Now this is a beautiful color, this malachite green. I'm going to use this because I needed a little bit of shading underneath those flowers, kind of to make them a little more distinct and make them pop from the background. And it was actually blue-green around these edges where the grass is. I didn't try to match all the colors perfectly, but I did want to stay as true as I could to some of these areas. Also, you'll notice I don't have any stems, and you'll have to excuse the hoarseness in my voice. It's turning into spring down south, and I have terrible allergies, so we'll work through this together. I don't have any stems on here. Stems and blades of grass will be the very last things that I do. Right now, I'm just worried about background grass, and this is a little trick I'm using here. I don't have the exact shade of brown that I needed for my grass. Yes, we don't have like a sodded yard. We live way out in the country, and some of our grass turns brown in the summer. So I have that green and that blue-green down, so I can take this shade is kind of a pink, it's kind of a purple, but I can mix those two together and I can get the shade of brown that I need. Because while there are some wonderful choices in this Caran d'Ache, it didn't have the exact shade that I needed for country yard brown, we'll call it. So I'm also using that to get a few more shadows and kind of tie that in to the flowers themselves, because I'm wanting to make certain that I'm consistent with my colors across here. And by using that pink in the background, it's going to add a little shadow to that greenery in the back, but it's also going to allow me to tie the colors in with the flowers. So I know those centers are already nice and yellow, but a little bit of that golden yellow from the Caran d'Ache on top is really going to make it pop. So I'm going to continue on with this process, and I'm going to give my voice a rest and let you watch me work. We're just putting the colors down, and as I said, I'll slow it down when I have those colors up on the screen. And if you have any questions about the process, or if you missed a color, if you're like you didn't slow it down enough, please put that down in the comments below. I love to hear from you guys. I love to hear where you're from. I love to hear if you like doing this kind of art, if there's anything else you want to see me try out, a product you want to see me try out. I may have it around the house somewhere. Just let me know, because I love when we're talking down in the comments. So give me just a minute to rest my voice. I'll give you a musical interlude and I'll hop back on in just a minute. Now, I could have left these flowers just like this, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to activate this color as soon as I can decide if I want any more of that pink on there. And I did, just a little bit. Again, this is later in the day, and there's my water I'm about to knock over again. And these are the brushes we're going to be using. Again, we still have that Royal & Langnickel size 8 because it holds a lot of water. I'm going to keep that flat brush on hand in case I need it. And then I also have from the Cotman series a size 6 round in the Winsor & Newton. And again, that's the Cotman series. And I like those brushes because they allow me to be a little more precise because they're not holding as much water. This is the area I was talking about. You can kind of alter the amount of color you have back there by rinsing your brush, making certain that you're coloring a little darker in some areas, a little lighter than others. And again, when I'm switching greens, even though it's all green, you will see me rinse. I'm trying to hold that down so it doesn't completely get underneath there and warp it up, but I will get my brush clean and tap it in order to switch from one green to the next. And there you go. You see right there, that is the brown I was talking about. By adding that pink on top, that purplish pink on top of that green, it's turning it into the brown I needed to kind of mix all of that together. And it actually is about the same color brown. You can tell the flower that's in the lower right hand corner, some of the green kind of mixed together, the Inktense and the pink, and I got that color. So I knew it was going to work out. So that's why I mixed those two together. So I'm going to keep activating this. And the motion that I'm using, now I'm getting to a larger area and I'm picking up a brush that holds a little more water so I can move a little faster. But the motion that I'm using on this brush is kind of a circular motion. And that's so I can give it a little more randomness. I don't want anything nice and smooth. Again, it's a loose painting, but if you like it nice and smooth, then you do you. Don't worry about what I do. Do what makes you happy. And whenever you see me doing these kind of loose paintings, I am naturally a person that likes to do more realism and not a lot of loose painting. I really like doing the tedious stuff. However, whenever you see me doing one of these, it's so that I can loosen up my art. I have a tendency to get a little over tight with things because I do enjoy the tedious work like portraits and precision drawing. I know that sounds strange, but that's something I do like to do. So whenever you see me doing these, it's because I'm getting a little too stressed out with some of the tedious stuff and I need to loosen up my art. I can tend to tighten my art up too much. So if you're a person that can tighten your art up too much, I highly recommend you do some loose paintings. Just hopping on to point out that I did not allow the background to dry before I started in with the flowers. The reason for that is that I want the edges to kind of come together. I'm okay if there's not a straight edge, a hard edge around the flowers, I should say. Not a straight edge, but a hard edge around the flowers. I kind of want them to do their own thing. And you'll see toward the end that some edges do get a little more sharp than others. But again, that's okay. I never know how these things are going to turn out once I start putting stuff down. And when you're working on this kind of canvas, you just never know how it's going to work out. You can guesstimate a little more when you're working on paper, but when you're working on the watercolor canvas, sometimes you just got to take whatever it gives you. At this point, we are going to let it dry, and you can tell some time will have passed because that sun is going to be in a different angle on the canvas, and I've taken it off of the board. And I wanted to show you this. It's going to go under the tape if you tape it down because the tape won't stick to this kind of canvas. So we're not going to worry about that right now. And here are the two colors, white and light gray. I love these two. That light gray is a blue gray, and it really works to tone things down when you need it to. And this point, I'm going to activate these. There are going to be some colors that I put on sometimes that I don't activate, but on this video, I'm going to be activating these top colors. I do like the white, that it looks like that, but reality is that's not as bright as what those flowers are in the end. I'm putting that on there to kind of tone down that hot pink and give it more of a light pink on the end, because these flowers are light pink on the outside and they get really dark, almost some of them red in the center, and then some of them will be kind of a purple toward the center. So I want to get those highlights in. I can actually pull those out with a tool that I'm going to use here in just a few minutes, but I thought it would be more fun just to add more color, and I was kind of wanting to, channel my inner kindergartner and do a little more coloring. So we're doing a little more coloring on this. So that's what we're doing here. I'm looking for the highlights. I'm looking for ways to distinguish between the petals, because some of these spun around on top of each other and they were overlapped and they're all different sizes. And so this helps me kind of differentiate between those. And that blue gray that you saw is going to be used to tone down some of the colors on the grass and to bring those together. And I wanted a little blue because we have a lot of greens and a lot of yellows and a lot of pinks, and I wanted something that was a little bit different. And we do have the blue-green underneath those petals, kind of separating them from the background. And I thought that would be a nice tie-in. That this is what I was talking about. I didn't stay true to the colors that were in the picture. I wanted to add my own things. So I took those artistic liberties, and that's what I did. We're going to start with this smaller brush that is the Winsor & Newton, again, because it doesn't hold as much water. And you'll see I am putting very little water on these, and it is turning those a light pink, and that's what I wanted. And I'm going to just drag that down, kind of to create a little bit of the texture that I can see in the photograph on the flowers, but not worrying too much about detail, just simply wanting to get the feel of the picture. You can really tell on the flower up front that I am using a very little water on my brush because not all of that color is getting activated. And that's important because the more water I use on the brush, the more chance that I'm going to activate that pink underneath, and I didn't want to do that. So we're going to come back to these two colors. And we know that that pink and the background green are going to cause a brown, but in the center of this flower there was a color I needed for the little center things that come up that needed to be kind of reddish brown. It was dark and it had some purple in it, but it wasn't really black and it wasn't brown, and I don't like using black in my pictures. I think more like, you know, an impressionist artist on that. And so I found that I can use this umber, and this is one of my handiest colors in the pack. I use that umber right on top, and once I activate it very, very carefully, I'm not going to activate it too much, those came together and created the color that I needed. So I'm coming back with a little more of the yellow to add those right on top of it where the pollen is. And that's what I'm going to do on this one and the one on the top. I'm also going to pick up some yellow ochre to add a little more depth into that. As you can see, we're getting some more depth just by doing this. I also am going to use that umber to bring a little more color down into the flower because there's a shadow created by it. It's a little darker around the edge of that. So we're going to use that to kind of bring a little more depth to the center of those flowers. You'll see that we're getting a little bit darker, and I'm bearing down a little bit more on these colors. Now, these will be activated, but they're not going to be activated as much as I did the background or as I did the initial layer of the Caran d'Ache on these petals. And I'm going to be blending them and activating them a little bit differently than what we normally do. I'm bringing out another brush in just a minute, but I want to get all of these shadows in all the way in the back, even on the greenery, and I want to go ahead and get any more color and texture on the ground, and we're going to keep going back and forth with that ground because I just kind of keep finding things that I want to add in. And this is my magic brush. This is my little scrubber brush. Again, this is from the Zen series on the Royal and Langnickel. Very stiff on those bristles. You're going to use this with water. You'll see it's stained. It's a white brush and it doesn't end up staying white. And here are the stems coming in. I'm simply pulling up the Caran d'Ache and it's going all the way back to that Derwent Inktense, and that's going to be my color to open up for the stem because I'm going to put another color on top with the Caran d'Ache, but this just kind of helps me get that on there and distinguishes it from the background. And now what I'm doing is kind of blending and adding texture to the background. I'm lifting colors where I want colors lifted. You can see I did that in that back fence row where we have the greenery and the shrubs back there. I believe those are blackberries we had back there in the summer, so those are the leftover blackberry bushes. I'm pulling out the areas where I'm going to have some blades of grass in the front, and then we're just kind of mixing everything in. To use this kind of brush, if you've never used a scrubber before, I call it, it's my magic brush, but it's also kind of like an eraser for watercolor. If you were using this on paper, you would need to be very careful because you could compromise the integrity of your paper. When you're using it on canvas, you can be a little rougher. So if it looks like I'm being rough, it's because I am. But you can see how it moves those around, helps you define things. To use it, and I don't think I ever got to that, but to use it, you get it wet and then you tap most of the water off. You don't want a lot of water because it will pull up and scrub up way too much if you use too much water in there. Now, as I'm going from one thing to the next, whether it's the background or the flowers or the centers or whatever I'm using it on, I need to reach up there and clean it really well and wipe it off so that I don't drag that around into the other things. And I think the magic on this is that it gives us a painterly feel. So we have gone from a watercolor pencil type situation to some crayon pastels, and now we are turning it into something that looks a little more painterly. And I really like that about this little brush. I think it works well on the canvas. I've not actually tried doing this on paper because I think it would be a little more difficult. I think on paper you just have to rely on your brush to get more of a painterly feel. But if you're working on watercolor canvas, I highly recommend that you pick up one of these scrubber brushes. Now we're blending just as I said that we would on these, and I'm using that scrubber brush, but I'm not using much water on it. I'm allowing it to almost be like when you're using oil pastel and you can blend it with your finger. It's kind of like that, except there's a little bit of water in it, which is going to activate some of that color and then move it around. So it allows me to activate it but not completely activate it. So it is activated, but it allows me to blend those just a little bit better and get some of the definition of that texture that was on the inside of those petals. Okay, my background is dry enough. I'm going to bring out that wonderful little light gray, that little blue gray, and you can see it adds just a little something to the background. And I'm going to use it on the flowers too, because like I said, I like to be consistent with those colors, and it's going to help me tone down things just a little bit. And I wanted to make sure before I added it to that background that things were actually dry, because if they're not dry completely, this is going to also pull up some color and move stuff where I don't want it. I still want all those colors back there. I just want to do something a bit different on top. And I almost forgot my blades of grass. So I've got those in there. I'm going to have to activate those in a minute. And I will activate these colors. I actually thought about leaving it like this. There are times in this where, and one of you said something to this effect on my last video, you know, it's always so hard to decide what to do so you don't overwork it. And it is. But I was in a coloring and activating mood this day, so I just thought I would go for it. So adding a little more green in, I really want to build up the color. The thing about using the watercolor canvas is that when you activate stuff, you can pull back and see more of the canvas coming through. And I wanted it to be just a little thicker of application on these colors. And the good thing about Caran d'Ache is you can keep layering it on, and it works beautifully on this watercolor canvas. Now that we're getting a little closer to the end and I'm finished activating some of these colors in the background, I'm going to show you what I like to use the scrubber brush for. I would probably just leave this as it is, the way it went underneath the tape, but to show you guys how you can use the scrubber brush, I'm going to put a little water on it, scrub back and forth, and then wipe that off. I'm not going to do it completely because, like I said, I don't mind that it's there, but you can get that back to where it's almost completely white. So I went around the edge just to show you, and I'm going to end up coloring outside of the edge on the petals at the top because I just thought I want to color outside of the edge. But if you don't mind whether or not you have a nice tight white border around there, then I wouldn't worry about going back around and taking that color off. Now, as I said, here I am going back with the blue on that because I wanted to tie this in with the background. And I really love that blue gray color. It's just, I love this little color. I think I use this and umber in every picture that I do. I love those two colors. I can always find a use for them. I will activate this as well. And this is where I'm going to come up and color around in the top, up at the top of the picture there, kind of take those petals to the outside. You know, you don't have to be confined to that little square. You're always welcome to work outside of it. Again, activating these colors that I just put down, this little blue-gray, with that scrubber brush because I want to blend it, but I don't want to lose it. And if I use too much water, I'm gonna lose it. So this allows me, again, to get more definition and to work that in. Well, we have come to the end, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. If it was your first time, thank you for stopping by. And if you're a regular and you made it all the way to the end, kudos to you. Thank you so, so much. Again, I appreciate you guys. Some of you guys have been hyping my stuff, and just for you watching and being here, I'm always so thankful for that. That helps me out so, so much. I look forward to making these videos. I hope you enjoy watching them. I'm going to have my next video, I'll have some more of these, but you know, I'm kind of like a squirrel. I'm just going from one thing to the next. So I'm going to have something coming up pretty soon in my Wonder Journal. I have something I'm wondering about. I hope you'll join me for that. But until then, my friends, I will see you in the next one.